Yeah, Kay's here.
Oh, poor Kay.
Happy New Year! Oh, welcome back, everybody. It's the very first indie author New Year kickoff panel of 2023, and I'm here with some amazing young adult epic fantasy authors. I'm just blown away because a couple of you I'm meeting for the first time today. Luis, you have come back after doing this with me for the first time a year ago. Andrew, I'm having you back on. We met this year. Kay's on. Hey, Kay. Matthias. And you're on top of
the
it,
chat.
Troy.
How do you do that?
This thing's called tabbing out.
Watching and presenting at the same time. Oh, goodness. So, yes, Happy New Year's, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. For those who don't already know who you are, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your books. Luis, you can kick us off and we'll sort of go clockwise around.
Okay, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Luis Mejia. I'm a relatively new indie author. It's a year ago I published my first fantasy novel. I have it right here to show you guys. This was the first cover that I did, and then this is the current cover, the redesign. It's the Grimalkin Knight. It's a young adult epic fantasy novel. And it's been quite a journey, just being in the indie author community, just meeting a lot of new people, and just learning as I go, because it's quite a learning curve to get started. But it's been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Luis is also a map maker. He has done maps for several indie authors in the community: C.H. Smith, Heather Carter, just to name two off the top of my head. He's very humble but very creative.
Thank you. Yeah, if you check my Instagram profile, you might not think that I'm an author, because you'll mostly just see maps, fantasy maps. But yeah, I draw fantasy maps for my books and for other authors as well.
Yes. And speaking of maps, Troy, tell us a little bit about your map and yourself and your books.
Oh, I have a map? Oh, yeah, that's right. There's a map back there. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Troy Knowlton. Like Luis, I'm very, very new to this indie author community. I really only kind of dived in this last year, but I had been writing for the last couple of years, kind of editing and working on my debut novel, which is Seekers, The Winds of Change. It's a YA fantasy novel, which can most easily be described as epic fantasy, considering the scope, the map behind me, stuff like that. But I really wanted to be a selfish writer and write what I wanted to read. And a lot of the things that I like and I look for in a story is character growth and that kind of Indiana Jones action adventure with just a little tiny bit of whimsy. And so that's the story that I wanted to write. And that's kind of what Seekers is. It's a blend of action and adventure, but also with some lore and some, I think, pretty good character building to kind of really bring home those coming of age tropes and those other different things that we associate with the more YA fantasy. And I released my debut last year. I guess we can all say that for first day I can say that this new year. And just like Luis, I've been meeting a lot of wonderful people, Andy and Andrew. Thanks, Matthias. And, just having wonderful opportunities like this. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you for joining. And I met you and AR both through Andrew. Andrew, welcome back to the channel. For those who haven't seen any of your videos, like the really helpful one about how to get your books into Barnes & Noble bookstores as an indie author, why don't you introduce yourself and your books, because you've got a lot going on.
I do, yeah, and more coming. So I'm Andrew D. Meredith, and I write epic fantasy. I debuted back in 2019, November, with my book Thrice. Oh, so we can actually see it. There it is. There it is. Woo! Oh! And it's also right there behind me, too. And I entered that in SBFBO and made semifinalist with that. It's a Slavic fantasy about a man and a boy on the road. And then I also wrote the Collation Saga. Oh, we're going to have to get rid of this.
Oh, wow. You've gotten rid of everything except for the book.
There we go.
Perfect.
There we go. So Deathless Beast and then its sequel, Bone Shroud, are the first 2 books in my epic fantasy series, which is going to be a little long, but part of why I'm on here too is I don't write specifically YA, but I grew up reading 80s fantasy, which was written for kind of everybody, right? And I wanted to write books that would be an easy sell, that when father, son, daughter are walking up to a booth at a at a con, I can say, hey, you can all read this, you're welcome, and
Absolutely.
move on from there. So that's what I write, and I do my own map work too, do some cover work as well, and yeah.
Very exciting. And I have read all of those books that Andrew just showed up, except for Thrice, which I'm in the middle of reading. Thank you for putting it on sale.
Through the 7th, yeah.
But they really are. It's one of those books you can read really no matter what age you are. It sort of brings back that classic fantasy. So, AR, it's so good to meet you in person. Hey, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Andrew D. Meredith. I write Slavic fantasy. I generally tend to focus on father-son relationships. The reluctant father is something I really like to dig into and talk about those tropes and those ideas and what that means. While I'm not doing that, I'm also writing The Legend of Blackjack, which is classic fantasy for everybody. It's if you like running around and adventures and strange creatures and animal companions and found family, it's all of those things, and it's a ton of fun.
Yes, so exciting. So much epic fantasy in this group. Let's see. Thrice is so good. All of Andrew's books are good, but I'm partial to Thrice.
Thank you, Katie.
And it's good to see everybody who's on. So if you're watching live, because I see there's a lot of people watching live this morning, please feel free to drop your questions for any of these authors in the chat. We will pull them up on the screen. And we've got social media. So if you're watching on Twitter, I can't pull your comments up on this screen. I'm going to have to pull them up on my phone. But feel free to drop them in. And if you're watching the replay, you can leave questions in the comments, and I will make sure that those get to the authors. And then it's up to them to answer you. But I will make sure they get to the authors for you. So a couple of the pre-submitted questions we got were actually about rebranding. So Luis, you mentioned that you had a new cover that you put on your book this year, but also Andrew, you've got some beautiful new cover art this year. When should an author rebrand their book is one of the main questions we've seen coming up this weekend. We've seen things like pen names and all of that, but when do you know it's time to do a rebrand with a new cover and a relaunch?
Come on, Luis, you got this.
Okay. Well, I'm probably not the best guy to ask this since I'm relatively new, but I think, well, for me, I guess I noticed that, the cover that I did, like I said, this one, I felt like it wasn't resonating with audiences. And about halfway into the launch of the book, I decided, all right, let me try something different, rebrand do a new cover, see if that works. And in a way it did. I got a professional cover artist to redo the art for the book. And I feel like it did work out. I felt like a lot of more people sort of liked the new cover. Although I've had some other readers say, "Hey, I like the old cover better." But hey, it is what it is. But I think just basically analyze, keep track of your sales, what audiences are saying, get feedback from readers, and go from there.
Yeah. And Andrew, I know you put a lot of thought and time into yours too.
Yeah, I did a double rebrand. So with Thrice, I changed the cover from what was a black with some ivy on it because it wasn't getting any traction. And I put it into SBFBO, and no one was really interested in reading it. And then as soon as I started changing the cover over to the Man and the Boy, suddenly there were people and reviewers, even in the SBFBO judge circuit, who were like, "Well, if I'd have seen that, I might have grabbed it," because they have like a slush pile to grab from. And I'm like, like, okay. So I quickly started doing that with my ebooks, and now the new cover is now in print as well. With that,
Wow.
and then with my Collation Saga, I started that. The first book, Deathless Beast, was 3 books, and because I'd split it out because I was basing my marketing on 2019 marketing and how people wanted smaller, faster, and so on. Well, COVID changed everything, and people want nice, big, thick, chunky, epic fantasies. And I'm like, so I can put this back the way I always meant it to be, but I was playing to the market as opposed to myself. And so I very quickly, like, I released it in July, August, September, and basically just stopped promoting them so that I could put them back together, get a new cover, and then relaunch all of them as a single book. So I could have waited a year, but there were people who were reading book 1 and then just kind of not reading book 2. And I'm like, I need you to read the first 3 books, which was now 1 book, right? And I'm like, this is not working. So I pivoted really quickly, and now no turning back, because and now it's, and now it's working, because now I have people reading it and moving on to book 2 right away. And so I did something right later, not initially.
I love that. Somebody else said on the last panel last night about writing to market. I think it was Jasmine, and finding out that writing to market doesn't mean just writing what's popular so that you can make money, even if you don't like the genre. It's finding out how to take your book to the people who want it and present it in the way that they're used to seeing books and want to see books. So AR, one of the pre-submitted questions we had for you on social was, have you found it difficult to transition from screenwriting to book writing?
That's an interesting question. They're kind of 2 sides of the same coin. The great thing about screenwriting is brevity. You have 120 pages tops in order to get this across. And oh, by the way, 80% of that page is going to be blank space. And when you get into dialogue, it goes bang, 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 and you can eat up an entire page with 8 lines of dialogue like that. And so what screenwriting does is teach you how to be brief, get it over with, cut out all the fat. And I think that's something that's really difficult for writers of long form to do in a lot of cases. And that's kind of part of the job that editors do, is come in and say, hey, you know what, this is boring, this section is weak, you're describing too much stuff over here, and help trim you down a lot. Because otherwise every book winds up being 700,000 words and nobody wants to read through all of it. So I think it helps being a screenwriter, because you realize that being quick and being brief and moving on to the next scene is important. And so that translates over to books. With this, the thing that you can do that you can't do in a screenplay is settle into somebody's emotional journey and talk about their feelings and what they're going through, and that narration comes in. Whereas on the screen, you're entirely dependent on the actor to portray that for you, unless you have Morgan Freeman doing the voice, reading your narration and telling you why Shawshank is such a bad place. So to me, there's a lot of freedom that goes along with these, because you can breathe a little deeper, go a little longer, and bring the audience with you a little bit more emotionally than you can in a screenplay.
I love that. And I think as an epic fantasy author, that's something a lot of us struggle with, is that shortening the brevity. There's a running joke that last year when I put 2 years ago, when I put my debut novel out, I tell people I had a pickling scene that was way too long. It's like a 5-page pickling scene. And it's now 1 or 2 paragraphs, because my developmental editor was like, no, we don't need to walk away knowing how to make a pickle. Just cut it down.
Calm down on the pickle. Relax.
In the collector's edition, maybe I'll put the full pickling scene in there for the really devoted fans. But
It's a book. It's a novella about pickling.
I have a whole short story about how to pickle vegetables. Here we go. Katie asks, what made you decide to write YA epic fantasy instead of the generic or adult fantasy? It's a great question. Troy, you want to hit this first?
Sure. Well, I guess when I first started writing, I didn't really know genre. If we talk about rebranding, when I was first starting out, I didn't really know if I was going to be writing for epic fantasy, just straight up epic fantasy in an adult, or in a more YA sense. And I kind of just wrote what seemed interesting to me. And like I said, it just happened to be that sort of kind of YA coming of age, trope. I feel like that while those are more associated with YA fantasy, that coming of age aspect is kind of an evergreen topic. It doesn't really change as you get older because things are always changing. So you're always having to come of age in a different way. Something breaks, and I have to look up how to fix it. So these kind of themes, while they are so more associated with YA, it just seems like they speak to a lot of people. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to convey through my writing. I wanted to speak to as many people as I could, and something that they would, potentially kind of sympathize with. And so that's at least my main reason why I was writing in YA. Also, I just love that whole, a lot of the different, I guess, classic tropes that go with YA. Enemies to lovers, found family, stuff like that. It's just that's more kind of my jam, and so that's why I decided to go with YA as opposed to adult fantasy.
And then Andrew, I know you've talked a little bit about yours, being that family for a book anybody can read, really.
Yeah, I mean, part of what I wanted to write was different generations interacting with each other, whether that's in grieving the loss of an older generation. And I think it's something that we all need to face regardless of our age, and using that as a focus through a younger character's eyes, or introducing to a new character in a way that you can relate with your own family members too is important, especially the last couple of years. So I wanted to focus on that and what that interaction looks like. And kind of, I always say I'm always trying to embrace normalcy, in that there's going to be scenes where you're pickling and playing board games and interacting with each other, and actually going and talking to Dumbledore instead of waiting till the last chapter. And yeah.
Luis, what brought you into the YA for Grimmauld Knight?
Right. I think for me, I started when I started writing, I knew I wanted to write fantasy. And in fact, the first novel, which, I didn't publish, it won't be published, was more adult, had more adult themes, was a lot more bloody, stuff like that. And I decided to veer away from it because the Grimmauld character was part of that story, and it just didn't fit. And I think, like Andrew and Troy were saying, I wanted to have something that could relate to anyone, and any a large audience could read it. And even though there's some I think themes in the Grimmauld Knight, like murder, betrayal, stuff like that, even children can read it because it's presented in a way that they can understand it. It's not too graphic or anything like that. And that's what I wanted to focus on with this first novel. Just have something that a large audience could read and could relate. Because the Grimmauld Knight, he's a humanoid cat creature, but anybody can relate to his experience, to his journey. And it's like a coming of age, him progressing and growing in his self-esteem and whatnot. And I think anybody can relate to that, whether young or old. And that's what I wanted to sort of portray with this character and the story.
Awesome. AR, last but definitely not least, why are you sort of aiming toward that YA genre?
For me, it was the theme, right? What I wanted, this book was always for the times when you feel lost and lonely, and that doesn't stop at puberty, but that 13, 14-year-old experience is something that we've all shared, where we feel uncomfortable in our own skin. You're not a man, you're not a boy, you're not a woman, you're not a girl. What are you? You're trying to find what that looks like. And so I feel like for that emotional context that I wanted to play with, I mean, that's the best solution to get where I'm going, because we can all relate to that and that feeling of powerlessness and not having any agency. So I think a 14-year-old kid is perfect for that kind of thing. And then you kind of pick them up and you take them along and you make a whole bunch of horrible things happen. And then you give them agency and give them, that's what the second half of the book is about, is hope of taking control of your own fate and your own life and making your own decisions for good or for ill. But taking the bit in your teeth and saying, this is who I want to be. And that's to me what fantasy, one of the great things about fantasy is that you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And I didn't want to do, the great warrior who goes in and has all the magical powers and I wanted somebody who was weak. I wanted somebody who was completely fish out of water. I wanted somebody who was not prepared for this, because I feel like that's who we really are.
That's
right.
Like,
okay, you can jump into the deep end of the pool and you can swim. It's okay.
Yes. I love that. And I know that's a thing I see in a lot of your books. Having read most of your books, just yours and Luis's and Andrew's, and Troy's is on my list because I only met Troy through Andrew like last month. But a lot of the characters have that starting point, whether it's Hannon having to grow into his confidence, or Luis, the Grimalkin, obviously being honestly a coward, pretty much thrown into a knight's place. It makes it so much more believable of what if I had to do this, and these expectations were on me. Luis, follow-up question from last year. Okay. I know you had mentioned translating into Spanish. Are you still working on a Spanish translation?
Oh, yeah, I'm still working on that. It's it's a long process. I've been doing it myself, but I'm thinking of just passing it on to someone else, because it's a lot of work, to translate it, plus working on the 2 novels that I'm currently working on. It's too much work. So, but I am working on that. Yes, I'll be done soon.
It's a lot, and I think when you're bilingual, sometimes people are like, oh, it should be easy to rewrite your book in a separate language, except there's so many things that don't carry over.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah,
so I take my hat off to you.
Especially because this is like medieval fantasy. There's certain stuff that I just, how could I describe it in Spanish? What word can I use? This word doesn't exist in Spanish. Stuff like that.
Yes. Troy, you released your debut novel last year. What advice would you give somebody who's wanting to start their very first writing journey in 2023?
Start learning. You're going to have to wear a million different hats by the time it's all over. Don't be afraid of mistakes. They're going to happen. Funny that you mentioned this. So my whole pre-pub process was kind of a nightmare. I had to actually go to 2 different interior designers and get 2 different renditions of the map done. And doing all that while working on edits and trying to figure out the best marketing strategy, and just working through Amazon KDP and all their little inner workings, and seeing about getting editorial reviews and just all the little nuances. So it's a lot more than just writing. Obviously, writing is the most important part. You got to get the words on the proverbial paper first, but just realizing and kind of understanding the scope of what you're getting into, being okay with that, and just kind of starting to be a sponge, just absorbing everything. That's what I did. I watched videos on videos on how to do all these different things, and consulted with people, and, did that multiple cycles of that before I was even ready to go. So just kind of understanding that and not being put off by that, I guess, would be my advice.
Yeah. It's going to be hard work, whether you self-pub or traditionally pub a book, different ways. But there are resources. So I still consider myself a newer author doing this 2 years later, but I have a YouTube channel playlist for indie author behind the scenes with guests. Like Andrew came on with his wife, and they talked about how you could get your books into Barnes & Noble stores earlier this year. And then we had Lily and Sue join in November, who's a PR rep who told you when to trust a paid PR, when to do it for free, when to get reviews and from where. There's a wealth of resources in the indie community, but getting plugged in has been a tremendous help. You killed it with book 1, Troy. Can't wait for the sequel.
Thank you, Bo.
Awesome. AR, are you planning to release your book as a movie?
Yes, we'll be starting the Kickstarter next week. We only need $120 million. I feel like it's really going to get there. That's what, I'll say that's the other big thing about the difference between a movie and a book is that in a movie, you need 250 people helping to make the thing. Whereas a book, it's all you. And being able to tell that story from beginning to end with just you would be great. But I think, we have a Luis, Troy, Andrew, and Andy combo plate on Disney Plus. Every week you get a different episode of a different book, and you just try and figure out what the story is.
Amazing.
That'd be great.
I think a lot of authors just dream of having their books be a movie, and I don't know. I'd be scared of trying to convert my book into a screenplay.
Well, one, it's incredibly difficult and no one should do it themselves. And two, recognize that, that's a nice dream and it's lovely to have. But the reality of it is it's not yours anymore, right? The moment that you sign it over, it belongs to the producer, which belongs to the director, which belongs to the actors, which belongs to the editor. And what you're going to get is a baby that doesn't look like your baby. Now, it might be good and it might be bad. Probably it's going to be bad because most things are. You just don't see them because they're bad. But if you spend your life longing for, if only it was turned into a movie, you hold your horses. It's okay. You're probably better off where you are.
Oh, I love that. Write more books. Take all the imagination and write more books. Absolutely. So, talking about everything going for 2023, brand new year, some of us writing, some of us editing, some of us doing that publication process Troy was talking about earlier. What are your goals for 2023, or what can you share with us about what's going on in your writing world, AR? We'll let you start.
Well, as you know, Noble 7 is over the finish line. Thank you. And I feel really grateful. One of the things Troy was talking about, advice to up and coming writers, be prepared to wear many hats. Lean on your editors because they're the ones who will save your ass. And especially if you're indie, because when you're trad, you have 3 or 4 different people go through your book and check it and nitpick it and make sure every quotation mark is bent the right way. Without your editors, you're helpless. It's just you, and you can't do it alone. So lean into your editors. So anyway, The Tale of the Border Knight comes out on January 3rd. And so that's fine. It's just a little novella. It's just like a love letter to the people that read The Legend of Blackjack, because it was like, how do I say thank you? And then I am hard at work on a second book because people I wasn't expecting people to notice that there was a book, so I wasn't expecting to write a second one. But apparently they like it, so okay, second book.
Wow. I'm super excited for the book to come out too. I can say, sneak peek, guys, you want to read this novella. It's really entertaining. Troy, what's going on in 2023 for you?
Well, I'm trying to do in 1 year what I did in 2 last time. So I'm trying to get the novel done for the sequel to Seekers, and get the whole pre-pub process done, and hopefully, God willing, get it out at the tail end of Q3, beginning Q4, maybe probably more realistically late Q4 of this year. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm about 50K into the sequel right now. I've been, getting a lot of bigger chunks lately, sort of starting to hit the stride on this story, because it's been, they say it's supposed to get easier after the first one, but I don't think that's always true. I think you're scrutinizing so much more. So trying to just work through that and kind of just keep chopping wood and keep going forward. So should be a good year.
Any big thing that you're doing differently for your release of book 2?
So I think it's more of a refining process now. A lot of it was trial and error the first time around, kind of a lot of stumbling. Like I said, had to switch interior designers, get different map stuff done, just more of like growing pains. Now it's more of just refining that process and maybe trying a few different things, but I kind of got my formula down where I'm happy with it. So I'm just going to keep trying to move ahead forward, make it bigger, better, show that I've learned a little bit, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Once you get your process, I think that's when it starts to get easier. But in my case, it took a full-length novel and 4 novellas to find a process that worked. Andrew, you have released a quarterly release plan, tentative, I guess, for this year.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you share a little bit about what's coming your way?
So the sequel to Thrice, Fourscored, will be coming out in April, tentatively, maybe May, but more. I'm hoping for April. That depends on how fast I can record the audiobook. And then Midsummer will be the Collation Saga Book 3, which is more than tentatively called The Gloves of Eons. And then in book Q4, maybe Q1 2024, but we're saying Q4 is going to be Collation Saga Book 4, which is Dread Night. And that will be coming out then, but I have to write that one still. So that's got to happen.
You can do it. We're excited to read it. The royal we is excited to read it.
And then I've got and then the plan will then be that the last book in the Needle and Leaf trilogy will be coming out in 2024.
Nice. So a lot of writing while also releasing and then recording your own audio
and recording. Yep.
Wow. And then you're going to con this year.
I've got a con in 3 weeks locally, and then I will be going to World Fantasy Con and dragging everybody else who wants to come with me, so that indie fantasy can just roll in like a publisher, and everybody's just going to assume that we all know what we're doing, and that's take it till we make it. So yeah, if you can make it to Kansas City next end of October, please come. Let's do this. Yes,
that sounds awesome. Actually, there's a couple really good cons this year. Storybound Book Fest, which I'm not a guest at, but a lot of my friends are going to. I think in July is going to be really huge. I've never seen so many indie fantasy authors in one convention before. I would have been happy with Bread Night. Luis,
yes.
What have you got going on this year? Because you're like working a day job, you're doing the map making on top of that, and then you're writing on top of that. What does it look like for you in 2023?
Yeah, I definitely, I think, bitten off more than I can chew. And that's why last year, because I released the Grimmelkin Night end of 2021. And then last year I was like, okay, I'll get the sequel out this year. And then, well, 2023 is here and nothing. But I've been working a lot. So the audiobook for the Grimmelkin Night will be released hopefully March of this year. So a couple months. Then I plan around June, middle of the year, to release it's not necessarily a direct prequel, but it takes place in the same world. It's a different story within the same world. It sort of tells more of the lore, the history of this world. And I plan to release that again between May and June. And then the sequel to the Grimmelkin Night, I plan to release probably by the end of the year, November. So at the 2-year mark, I hope to release the sequel to the Grimmelkin Night. So that's
awesome. That's amazing. If you're watching and you're a newer writer, I think it's really common, at least from what I've heard and what I experienced myself too, to have a little longer lag than you'd like after your debut book. And then somewhere you start hitting your groove more and you put out more books. But someone brought up on the panel yesterday, you've got a lot of books coming out because I'm rapid releasing a 5 full-length book series, January, February, March, April, May. January 17th is Oracle of Life's debut. But I wrote all those books in high school, and now I'm just rewriting them to make them more mature and actually read like real books and not fan fiction. But a lot of us have those trunk books, and those are great for rapid releases and stuff, but I couldn't have knocked out 5 full-length books in a year, even where I am, because I work too and edit and do all this stuff. So if you're getting into writing, don't feel like if I can't come up with 3 or 4 books a year, I don't have any business publishing. That's not necessarily the case.
It's so much more important to know yourself as a writer. And to those who are just starting writing, spending a few months or 6 months to just focus on who you are as a writer and what you can accomplish, so that you're staying true to yourself, is so important. Trying to emulate other authors for the sake of, but they did it right. It's like, yeah, for them. That doesn't mean it's true for you. You know, how many words can you write in a day? What is that for you? Or does that just fill you with existential dread? Okay, so word count should not be important to you. I'm obsessive about it. But that's me. And I don't think anybody should be doing that. Just like I do way too much world building. Nobody else should be doing the level of world building that I'm doing, because it just gets in the way of ever getting published. Because publication is a feature, right? But you got to learn your coding first. And yeah.
Yeah. Helen says publishing one book is a major achievement that should be celebrated.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Give yourself some grace. And if you've watched anything, we did 6 panels yesterday. We spoke to over 24 guest authors yesterday, and everybody's writing style is a little different, and everybody releases books a little different, but each of them have a book that's just as good to read. And 24 books you'll be adding to your TBR list if you're a fantasy addict like I am. So there's not necessarily a right way to write, as long as, like AR said, I lean heavily on my editors too. Thank you, Sam and Fu and everybody. Even editors have editors. So as long as it's edited and it's not typo filled everywhere, you're good. Just give yourself some grace. So a lot of exciting things coming in 2023 from all of you. There's so many of you on, as well as people who were on the panel yesterday, talking about the blog off. I got some questions on Instagram last night after the panel, and I was wondering if maybe you could answer them, because I don't have them, about what the blog off is, where do they participate, and where do they read about the books that are in the blogs.
Yeah, so SPFBO, which is SPFBO, Self-Publishing Fantasy Blog Off, it's had 8 years so far. So this next one will start in May. So that's when you start looking out for it. You can look out for it earlier, and you can start reading up on it now, because what it is Mark Lawrence, traditional published author, put this all together 8 years ago. He's gotten 10 different blogs that all sign up to read books that are submitted. And then he opens up a window, which this last time filled up in less than 8 hours. It only gets shorter. Like it was 16 the year before. It was a day the year before. It was 48 hours. So it really is really fast. Like we're all up at 5 a.m. putting our entries in. You submit your book, and then those 10 blogs all get parsed out, all 300 entries, 300 max. And then they, over the course of 6 months, read their 30 books. Well, they sample them or get through reading them. And then they choose a select number of semifinalists. And then from those semifinalists, each blog's team decides who their finalist is going to be by November. Come November, every one of the 10 blogs has to read all then 10 finalists by May and have given it their grade of 1 through 10 stars, right? And then whoever has the highest average, they win and get to call themselves the winner. But just being a semifinalist, you get to put the stamp on. Just being a finalist, you get to put the stamp on. And it's in the end, it's free marketing. You're getting out there, you're getting a chance to have so many people read your books, and most importantly, it gets you involved in community. The indie community, once you find it, is fantastic. It's really hard to find if you don't know what you're looking for. And so getting involved with all the other authors, you're no longer an island. And it's so important to not be an island, because you're out there just hoping you can make it in, and you need friends.
And while we're on the subject, would you guys mind sharing what communities and Katherine, you too, but what communities where you hang out? Because Troy and Andrew and I are on like Indie Accords in Discord, and Keymark in Discord. And, we've got a community going there, but, it's always useful to have more communities, and you got to dip your toe, because not all of them are the right thing for you. So Katherine, Luis, Troy, Andrew, like, what are the communities that you hang out in and you enjoy?
That's a great question. Troy, Luis, y'all want to start?
Well, I guess I've mainly been part like Instagram, meeting a lot of indie authors through Instagram. I know I started talking to Katherine. She read my book, reviewed my book, and then she got me on these panels last year. And then from there, I met like C.K. Sorens and Craig, and other indie authors. And I've been meeting authors, through Instagram. So that's mainly the community I've been. I also started like a Facebook page. I know a lot of authors are on Facebook, and there's quite a few indie author communities on Facebook, like fantasy, sci-fi. So you can get involved in those, and I'm part of a few fantasy like groups.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Troy?
Well, I started off on Twitter mainly, just kind of building followers, talking to different people, and then somehow I stumbled into the Indie Accords. It was just a readathon at that point, and so that was really fun. Except I lost a bet, but we don't have to talk about that. But
Yes, we do.
Oh my gosh! The short version is I had to eat some raisins. It wasn't a fun time. Would do it again though.
It was a great video. The man ate crow like I've never seen anybody do it before. It was impressive.
Thank you, Andy. The actual short version is I bet this other author who was on an opposing team on the readathon, Chago Abdallah, author of A Touch of Light. We both found out that we hated raisins, so I came up with the idea that whoever loses had to eat raisins live on camera while reading the other person's book. And well, I'm the one that lost that, so kind of a victim of my own Frankenstein's monster. But it was fun. It was a fun experience. I posted the video on YouTube, and everybody kind of liked it. But that's just kind of goes to show the kind of community that's present here in the indie community. Like, we laugh, we have fun. The Accords, Keymark Discord, member of Dom's from Domish Books, his Discord. The Wizardly Duo Discord with Andrew Wizardly Reads. I'm a member of a lot of different Discords. I kind of dabble on Instagram, Twitter still. A lot. I have a bunch of friends on Twitter, and even kind of dabbling with TikTok too. So just kind of spreading my horizons, but I mainly am focused on those Discords, the Accords and the Keymark Discord. Mm-hmm. It's a great community.
And this is all new to me because I'm just getting a Discord for the first time, like this month. I've mostly hung out in Facebook and Instagram, and I've noticed a big difference between the way the community works in Instagram versus having like a group or a set chat in Facebook. I dropped 3 Facebook groups in the comments, and each of them have strengths and weaknesses in different places. Like the Fantasy Author Network is a smaller group. These are all authors that I've met on Instagram that wanted to collab somewhere. So they created that group. And that group is heavily for, can we swap mentions of each other's books? Who is doing sales of each other's books? So it's more the businessy side of the author journey. The Fantasy Writer Critique and Support group was a great group when I was writing and hadn't even put a book out, because they have a very friendly personality. There's no question too stupid. It doesn't matter if it's the same person asked the same question 2 months ago and you didn't know it or didn't look it up. But as I grew into where I am now, I don't use it as much as I did, because now I'm past the newer questions in some regards. Still learning every day, but doing that. And then the IFA author group is probably my most active Facebook group, which is the Indie Fantasy Addict author group. There's an Indie Fantasy Addict Facebook group for readers, of which I'm also a part, and we do challenges every summer where you read and review books and you get points and earn prizes, which are 4 books to read over the summer and share honest reviews with each other as readers. And the authors who are also readers have their own separate group, which is the one I put in the comments. And we talk about tropes, things in the market, what's trending up, what's trending down, conventions, and all of that too. But like Luis, my first real community was Instagram. Most of the people in the writer community, if you look them up on Instagram, have become very dear friends. And it's where I met a lot of the people that are on the panel this year have been through that community. I met Luis because I'm a Readsy Discovery reviewer, and I reviewed The Grimilkin Knight having no idea who Luis was. And he was one of only 19 books that earned a 5-star review, because I'm sort of notorious for being very difficult to give out 5 stars. Most of mine are 2, 3, 4-star reviews on Readsy. So he was one of 19 books in 2021 that got a 5-star, and we connected there on the panel and just spiraled from there. But really, coming into this, I cannot stress enough what you guys said. The community is what makes or breaks this journey for indie, because the writing can be a very lonely journey, but the publishing doesn't have to be.
Yep.
The rising tide is what lifts all the boats, is what I'm learning very quickly. When we as indies succeed, it brings attention to all of us, and opportunity to all of us. And I pointed out last year, even as someone brand new, if Stephen King puts out a book someone doesn't like, gosh, how can this be? Then they just say, oh, I didn't like that book. That doesn't mean they're never going to read his books again. That doesn't mean they're never going to read books his publisher puts out again. But if someone reads an indie book, there's a high chance that they're going to say, I'm never going to read an indie book again. And the whole thing, the baby goes out with the bathwater.
Right.
So really, we stand the strongest chance of success when we lift each other up and help make each other's work as great as it can be. Katie, join us. Catherine,
Join us.
Katie, I'll look you up. Keymark has a readathon kicking off January 6th.
Thanks, Bo. If you guys want to be a part of a readathon where you only need to read 5 books, Keymark is doing exactly that, starting on January 6th to February 6th. And we love independent authors. So, if you're interested in putting your foot in the community, that's a great one. The other thing I'll say is Indie Accords is phenomenal. Jordan and Lana are fantastic. They've got 1 million writers in there. It's just great. And, like I said, you don't have to pick one, right? You just find the thing that works for you.
Yeah.
But it's important to be a part of that community. Katherine, do you mind if I ask a question?
No, go ahead.
So it's YA epic fantasy, right? That's the subject. Luis, Troy, Andrew, what were the YA epic fantasies that hit you, either when you were a kid or as adults? Like, what are the things that live in your head rent-free?
I think for me, most of my early readings were made for everybody. Although The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis was the one that got me in love with epic fantasy, because I was like, talking horses, runaway boys, and girls that can fight and all that stuff. But that one has stuck with me probably the longest. And then Hawk Song by Amelia Atwater Rhodes was the first fantasy I ever read by a female author that just opened my eyes to women can write too. And it just had, I don't know, it was such a profound thing, having always read male authors growing up. And that's sort of what got me into, okay, you have permission to write. If they can write this book, you can write this book too. Or, your own book. So yeah, I think YA fantasy is a huge reason why I love to dream, love to write, love to publish. How about you guys? What are some of the YA stuff?
For me, I always go back to Tolkien and The Hobbit. If you read The Grimmauld Knight, you'll see a lot of inspiration. I think even just reading the prologue, you'll feel like, wait, this feels like a chapter from The Hobbit, because it's very similar. There's a lot of similarities with the talking dragon and whatnot. Of course, I didn't want to rip off Tolkien, but I was heavily inspired by him, and still am. And I always go back to his books, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, The Children of Húrin, and all his stories to get inspired for what I'm writing. So mainly for the Grimmauld Knight, it was The Hobbit, because I always grew up, reading about Greek mythology, Norse mythology, and I know Tolkien, for his works, he was inspired by Norse mythology. A lot of his works are inspired by the Scandinavian tales. So for me, it was definitely The Hobbit. It just a feeling of it. The dragons, just the whole world that he created is a huge inspiration, and that's what I always go back to.
Troy.
So for me, it was kind of a mix of what Catherine and Lewis said, because I also am really, really fond of The Hobbit. It's one of the stories that me and my dad both shared and really, really loved it. He both read it when we were really, really young, so we would kind of share our experiences reading it, at that time and kind of what it meant to us. But another big one is another book by C.S. Lewis, his series, the Chronicles of Narnia series. That was a very, very influential one for me too. So those ones, the Never-Ending Story is another one that resonates with me pretty hard. And so just kind of reading all of those when I was really, really young, and then seeing like different kinds of media, like TV shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender is another kind of YA story, an animated series that really hit with me too. So all of those kind of really resonate, and yeah, they definitely live in my head rent free, and usually cost me money when I go out and buy pop culture stuff.
Meredith?
So my reading journey goes across the 3 decades of growing up watching the Rankin Bass Hobbit, and then being introduced.
Oh my gosh, you're the one.
Yes.
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah.
But even more important, the Return of the King cartoon. Those
Yes.
do live in my head rent free.
Yeah.
Because Frodo was of the 9 fingers of the Ring of Doom. Why does he have 9 fingers? Where is the Ring of Doom? Rhymes, right?
Here there's a whip,
and
there is a way.
That's right. I don't want to go to war today.
Ever on.
Yeah.
So I started with that as a very little boy, right? As like a 5-year-old in the 80s, and then went on to, my dad had a big collection of fantasy in our basement library, which was like the old wood room, and so David Eddings and Dragonlance were right there when I was 11 and 12, and that started me on that journey of being in the back, pulling my brother and sister around on a wagon, and then Robin Hobb, little boy, who's telling the story, right, for Assassin's Apprentice, at least at that point. And then after I kind of quit fantasy for a couple of years, then Mistborn, which most people will say totally a YA. It's like, no, it's readable by YA, but is it YA? You know what? It's so ageless, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I went through definitely a character arc myself of what I was reading that developed into what I thought I could then tell.
And what about you, AR?
Oh my, come on. You guys have covered all the good stuff.
Hey, we still got Dragon Riders of Pern out there.
Dragon
There's
Riders
a lot
of
of stuff
Pern.
we haven't talked about.
The other one that I need to say is that when I was a kid, it was The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. And I'll make the argument, quite frankly, that Hobbit and Lord of the Rings are YA, because if you think about it, the Hobbits are children. They're innocents. And so them being thrown into this world has kind of a YA feel to it, because it's their coming of age. And just because they're hobbits and they're 45 years old, like if they always felt like the innocent children to me, which is why they're so small. But the other thing, when I was a kid, it was like, you get done with The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and then there's Lord Fowl's Bane, which is the worst book ever written. If you're 10. And so Terry Brooks deserves a lot of credit for forming that bridge between when there was just the Tolkien stuff that kind of started to give rise to, the Robert Jordans and the Brandon Sandersons of the world. Terry Brooks got me through a lot of, 3-4 years of, oh, gee, there's nothing. Eddings as well. But Terry Brooks often gets kind of dumped on the trash heap of history, and I hate to see that happen, because he had a pivotal place in my life.
Alex, thank you so much for your very kind comment, and I totally relate. It's something I told actually one of my idol authors when we actually started talking like regular people this year on Twitter. Is that we put authors on a pedestal a lot of times when we grow up readers, and we're like, wow, look at them, if I could be like so and so. And then once you become one yourself, you're just like, I'm just a regular person. Like I hit the USA Today bestseller list and I still eat at McDonald's. Like it's just nothing has changed, except that this book, this story that chose to be written by me, has done something beyond myself somehow. That really we're all just regular people, and That means anybody can be a writer.
Wait a second. You mean you didn't get your free cabin by the pond in the hills where you do all your writing and musing and meditating alone?
No,
And then after a month, they give you $100,000, right?
Right. There you go.
You're just
Who
like,
would do that?
oh. Yeah, we talked yesterday. You need at least 6,000 sales to hit USA Today bestseller. Well, you make 6,000 sales, but if your book's 99 cents, you're making 37 cents. You're really not making what you think somebody might be making with that title. As awesome as it is, the best part of writing for me is that readers, for some reason, are taking the time to read my books. That is the biggest honor, and the pay is nice, but not essential. So in the last few minutes that we've got, we're going to go around and talk about one special thing that if you want the readers to go away with knowing that they should look for from you in 2023. Troy, I'm going to let you start us off. What is one special thing people should look for from you this year?
One special thing. Wow. Well, I am going to get my sequel released. I'm going to promise that I'm going to put my heart and soul into it, just like I did with my debut. But I can say that one special thing will be that I will get it released, that I will make sure that I shout it out to the world, and that hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Yay. Very excited. You can do this, Troy. Like Andrew said, no pressure. He wants your book out by May.
We'll see.
Luis, what's one thing people should look for from you this year?
I think more so than the sequel in this other book that I'm writing, I think people should be looking forward to and excited for the audiobook. I've been getting the sample chapters from the narrators, and it's coming along great. And I know audiobooks are quite popular now. So for audiences who haven't read the book, I think this would be a good opportunity to jump into the Grimlock Knight's journey. And the great thing about an audiobook, you could, listen to it on your way to work or school or whatever. So I think that's one thing that audiences should be excited. And again, if you haven't read it, this is a great opportunity. Just listen to it. And again, this is done by, professional narrators, and it's coming along quite great. So I'm excited to share that with everyone.
See, I want to listen to it so that I know how to pronounce all the names that I think I know how to pronounce in my head, but might have wrong. AR, what is one thing people should be on the lookout for from you in 2023?
More of that. I would say if you haven't read this, read it. And if you don't like it, dump it. But if you do like it, there's more on the way. And the thing that I've figured out, Meredith has this rhythm, right? He's earned it. And that's what I want to get to, is the point where I'm producing at a reasonable pace. To me, I love character work. So novellas give an opportunity to dive into a character, play around with them, tell a story, and get out. And so, I, in all honesty, my hope is that I'll have the next book done this year. But even if I don't, there will definitely be another novella coming, because I love that storytelling style. And novellas don't make any money, right? But one of the things that, if you're thinking about being a writer, one of the things that, like Katherine said, lower your expectations. Mm-hmm. This is not a place where people are going to be throwing money at you. Every single one of us is doing this because it's a passion. It's not because there's piles of cash raining down from the sky. And to me, being able to do a novella quickly, I can, give me 6 weeks, I can give you a novella. And being able to do that, I think, is really freeing to me as a storyteller, because I can take a story that's not as big and give you notes of character that go along with that. So I'd say, obviously, The Tale of the Border Knight coming out in a couple of days is the first thing you should look for. But I think probably another novella coming down the line, hopefully with a second book. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, Andrew, what is the one thing out of all the things?
Be looking for Kickstarters. I'm hoping to pre-sale all the books, and then come middle of late summer, early fall, we'll do a hardback release on all 4 of the first of the Collation Saga. So we're working towards that, and I have a lot to figure out and learn before we get to that point.
Awesome. So exciting. And if you're looking for Kickstarters in the meantime and you're watching, we had several yesterday authors who are doing Kickstarters or prepping one, and it's free to be notified when it launches, and you can see the indie swag and the indie books. And yeah, it's really exciting to see what's coming this year. But thank you all so much for taking time out of a New Year's morning to join me for a panel kicking us off today. It is such a pleasure to talk with each of you and meet a couple of you, and I wish you all the best in 2023.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Katherine.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for making us get up.
Yeah, I was, telling them before you hopped on, AR, that I felt bad last night messaging, hey, don't forget that we've got a live tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock right before midnight. And they're like, really? I was like, I wonder if any of them are even going to show up this morning. They're like, what are you talking about? And seriously, for all you readers too who are tuning in, I see several of you on YouTube, several of you on Twitter. Thank you for spending your morning with us. We've had 6 panels yesterday, as I said. Those are all available in my YouTube playlist, and we have 5 more today and a few more tomorrow. Over 60 different indie fantasy authors. So subscribe if you want a notification when they go live.
God bless you, Katherine. I don't know how you're doing it.
I love it. It's a passion job, right? Take care, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Bye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.